This is the Rebel Call channel. Welcome to today's show. This is a really important story to keep your eyes on. This story out of Tennessee that lawmakers voted to ban geoengineering in the state of Tennessee. It's important to note because it's a very easy trap to fall into. We all need to look at these stories and say, wait a minute. So all of a sudden, these bought and paid for politicians in the state of Tennessee are going to admit that chemtrailing is real and they're going to ban it in that state. So how does that make you feel? If you're awake and you understand what chemtrails are and what they've been doing to us, obviously the first thing we all think of is, well, I'd love to move to Tennessee. I'm going to Tennessee because I'm sick of feeling like this. I'm sick of getting chemical bombs. I'm sick of seeing haze skies every single day. And clearly these are the types of deceptions we have to look out for. Because this is, again, a fully compromised government. That is why they're going forward with this New World Order plan. And part of that plan is to create two countries within this country. Both are going to be under communism. It's going to be Republican communism and Democrat communism. It's going to be the same exact thing, mirrored with just different names. It's going to have a different look to it, but it's going to be all one and the same. So this tells me, this story, it doesn't tell me that all of a sudden lawmakers in Tennessee have grown a soul and all of a sudden that they care about people and all of a sudden they're admitting in Congress that they're bombing us with chemicals. What it tells me is that they're luring people. And like I've been saying for months/years now, we have to watch the stories that come out of all these states, right? We all see what they've done with Florida. They've tried to lure in conservatives to become a conservative state. Everybody's fleeing California, going to Florida. Everybody's fleeing New York, going to Florida. We have to watch other states and the rules and regulations that get passed. States that are anti-Roe v. Wade, those types of states are going to be conservative states. They're hurting people. This is how you herd people. You lure them in, right? You dangle the carrot in front of their face. And for people like us, this is an exact thing that we're probably going to hear to get lured into this. We can't be dumb enough to fall for their traps. All of a sudden, they're going to stop spraying chemicals on us, and all of a sudden, they're going to admit that they're dumping chemical bombs on us. Now, I'm going to play a clip for you from a local news affiliate in Tennessee, and of course, they mock this. They say, well, you know, they're talking about geoengineering as if chemtrails are an actual real thing. It's a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory at all. Anybody with common sense knows this. Anybody who uses their own two eyes to see it. And so many people out there have documented what's inside of these jets that are flying above us, dumping chemicals on us, and it is not water vapor. Here's the story out of Tennessee on their local news affiliate.
At 5, Tennessee lawmakers are trying to ban the intentional release of chemicals into the air based on a conspiracy theory. Chief Transportation Correspondent and pilot Mackay Beeler explains what's in the anti-chemtrails bill and what this could mean.
Tennessee lawmakers passed SB 2691 earlier this week. If passed, the legislation would ban chemtrails in a bill based on a conspiracy theory. The chemtrail conspiracy theory claims commercial aircraft release poison into the atmosphere intentionally. Believers say the white lines you may see coming from planes in the sky are not vapor clouds known as condensation or contrails, but instead chemicals being sprayed from jets for a variety of reasons. A 2018 study suggests contrails play a big role in global warming that has been underestimated. The Tennessee bill claims the government may conduct geoengineering experiments by intentionally releasing chemicals in the atmosphere. If the legislation ends up becoming law, it would prohibit the release of the chemicals, which lawmakers claim affect the temperature, weather, and the intensity of the sunlight. If Tennessee's governor signs the bill, it would go into effect July 1st.
Okay, so what we're hearing is illusions of chemtrails, right? So the government's they're out of touch now. The Tennessee Republicans think that this conspiracy is running rampant. Oh my goodness, this is crazy, right? Of course, they'll never, actually come forward and admit to this. So this is clearly a herding mechanism. The Tennessee State House of Representatives passed a bill designed to prevent geoengineering, the practice of intentionally modifying the atmosphere to counteract global warming. The bill, which had already passed in the state Senate, covers a variety of technological interventions. And again, the chemtrailing, Democrats these people are so just completely I mean, it's amazing how stupid these people are. But they've actually been convinced that if they don't believe it's water vapor, which you have to be a complete idiot to believe because water vapor would dissolve immediately, they're actually convincing a lot of these people that what the government is doing is spraying to prevent global warming. And what they're really doing is spraying to create climate change. They're making climate change. Now, it's not drastic, but what it is doing is it's not just poisoning us, it's also poisoning our food supply. It's making it very difficult for farmers to grow crops. It's poisoning water supplies. This is what they're doing from above, and they've been doing it for a long period of time. Yet nobody's looking up and paying attention. All one would really have to do is watch a blue sky day, watch the planes go by, watch the streaks in the sky, and just stare at it. Stare at it for 12 hours in the day and watch how your sky turns gray, like what they say is a supposed California day, okay? It's a chem bomb. And they've been doing it for a long time and getting away with it. So the fact that they're bringing attention to it in Congress tells us that it's going to be used. These are going to be tactics they use to lure us. And people go, well, that's fine. I'll be lured to a place like Tennessee because I don't want to get chem bombed anymore, and I completely understand. Okay, but it doesn't resolve the problem because, again, what you become is a sitting duck. If they know that people are going to Tennessee, if they make these states designed specifically for your political ideologies and your religious beliefs, you're going to become sitting ducks for direct energy weapons and weaponized weather, period. That's why Texas and Florida have been chosen specifically as conservative states. Florida has always been a flip state. Anyone out there that's paid attention, all we think about now is like, man, Florida, conservatives. It was never like that. It was a flip state. You could see how they've mapped this out. These states that are now specifically looked at as Democrat states, blue states, and red states. And this is psychologically being done by design. And the more time that goes by, the more desensitized people get to this. And they think that it's just normal for states to have a specific ideology, a specific party representing that state. That really what they should be saying is, how come it never flips in any of these states? How come a state like New York stays blue? Right? It stays blue by design. You don't think people in New York are sick and tired of this stuff? I know people in New York. The people in New York are not these these lib crazy people like we know about in California. Okay, yes, New York is a honeypot for a lot of people, or a melting pot, I should say, for a lot of people of different nationalities and religions to go there. But overall, New York is not this crazy blue state. Not everybody wants the crazy things that they're doing there, right? You would think people would vote these psychopaths out of power, but of course our votes don't count. So people should be becoming suspicious that these states just remain the same color while the people in power continue to destroy them, right? Wouldn't you think California, that they'd want to flip the ideology there, the political affiliation there, based on the stuff that we see, they show us day and of course you would think that, but that doesn't make sense in a world because nothing makes sense in this world anymore. Common sense seems to be against the law. So the bill, which had already passed, and again, I love how they make this out there like, all the articles out there about it are talking about Tennessee bill endorses chemtrail conspiracy theory, legislation targeting baseless concept to keep state skies clear, essentially futile given politicians cannot control sky and wind. And everybody the government can't control sky and wind, right? And then we know all the patents for HARP. We know the earthquake machine patent. We know Operation Popeye. There's so much stuff out there that shows us that the government not only knows that they have it patented to be able to do this type of stuff, but they use dumbed down articles like this to make people out there just go, oh yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I want geoengineering. This is what it's going to turn into. These people are going to think, they're going to come out and they're going to say, look, the stuff you see in the sky is to prevent climate change, right? And everyone's going to go, oh, well, then we want it. We want more of it. Give us more. Dump more on us. That's how dumb they are. It's insanity. But really, it's basic communism 101, right? So most geoengineering options are theoretical and untested. Federal researchers have taken only a few small steps towards studying their feasibility, and atmospheric scientists say there is no evidence of any large-scale programs. Sure, let's take them at their word for it, right? I mean, you kidding me? I love, too, when, like, Lana Del Rey and these celebrities come out and mock the chemtrail thing, right? They could openly tell you right to your face and say, look, we're dumping chemicals on you. This is part of spell casting. We're witches, and we're just chemical bombing you. And everybody out there still thinks it's a conspiracy theory. There is no free thought going on anymore. And nobody should be running to their political affiliation on matters like this. They should be going, hey, I don't care what you are. I'm a human. You're a human. We don't want to get poison dumped on us. But This is what they've gotten us to with divide and conquer. It's worked out perfectly. Now I'm going to play a clip for you that I played before in the past, where they actually used to bring attention to this in Congress, the ability to manipulate the weather with cloud seeding and geoengineering, and how they've been doing it for a long time and getting away with it. But of course, it's a conspiracy theory. Well, it's not actually. It's the truth of what's going on. Look.
Mr. Fletcher, another question on the in an interview with the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
questions. Yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States, are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs that I know of today, and this is all public record, are available at any time with oversight, agricultural oversight or public oversight. These programs impact agriculture, and there are programs around the world. International corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify our weather. So one of the things that I'm concerned about and that we need to address in the future is how these programs are impacting microclimates needed for our crops to survive and needed for pollination. If we change the growing season, the pollinators may not survive, and also our crops, our flowers, and our tree crops may not get the pollination needed. So one of my areas is looking at this situation to see if we can begin to put under control experimental and other types of weather modification programs. The other issue is that a lot of times we're talking about mitigation for climate change. It's rather an undefined term at this period of time. And so what happens is that many times we're talking about artificially putting chemicals like sulfur or particulates into the atmosphere in what they call geoengineering schemes to reduce and help the planet, supposedly, but help the planet to not go through such a tremendous global climate change and to mitigate global warming. However, the incidence of putting chemicals into our atmosphere is going to change and impact agricultural crop production. And if you take and you put up into our skies chemicals to reduce the amount of sunlight reaching the earth, you are going to begin to reduce crop production. Studies at the University of Illinois on corn crop production show reductions. Without the process of photosynthesis, whereby plants from direct sunlight gain the energy to grow, to produce crops, we are going to find ourselves, if we mitigate in that direction, impacting the crop production not only here in the United States, but worldwide. One of the things that is impacting crop production right now in the United States and reducing photosynthesis and also impacting the ability of solar power panels to generate the type of power that they should is persistent jet contrails. NASA talks about persistent jet contrails as exacerbating global warming because they trap warmth in the atmosphere when they produce cirrus and man-made clouds. NASA also talks about that these aircraft leaving persistent contrails are changing our climate. And when they change our climate to the degree that one jet can leave a persistent jet contrail which will spread across our skies from what this picture up here on my left on the screen looks like, which is a trail left by a jet, that trail can expand to 4,000 kilometers and last for 20 hours. This was unheard of in the early 60s and the 70s, and it wasn't until the late 1980s that there was a change and we started to have persistent jet contrails that persist. NASA studies show that part of our global warming problem could be attributed to these types of contrails and the jets that leave them. So one of the issues as we go through is, how do you like your skies, natural or man-made? And right now we are making man-made clouds, and this is trapping warmth in our atmosphere. The climate change that is produced by these jets, not all jets, mostly some non-commercial, but what happens to our skies is that we start to see the changes. The man-made clouds do trap the warmth, and they increase the humidity. This allows for pests to proliferate, diseases, molds, mildews, funguses, and viruses. This is a man-made cloud, ladies and gentlemen, and these pictures I took myself over Northern California, and this is a burst. This is where a jet left a huge plume, and then this turned in at the end of it to a burst, and this is not normal, never seen before in our county historically, and I was born and raised there. This is another picture showing the jet trail just before the burst. This is our skies, and I want you to know that what you're seeing now, a lot of times many scientists know, especially at NASA and in other areas, that the skies that we're seeing are not normal cloud formations. These are man-made. And what happens as we reduce the amount of sunlight in a form of global dimming, we reduce the solar power with these type of clouds, and we reduce photosynthesis, which is going to impact agriculture. The pictures look odd. The formations don't look like normal clouds that people have seen before historically. This is another type of man-made cloud, and what we have done and what you're seeing here is we have the photographs from the times that the jet leaves the first trail as a thin, spindly trail to where they form into these different types of cloud formations. All of you can start looking up and seeing this. What happens is that there are experiments, and there's a color, you can see some color in this photograph. And part of what we're doing also is we're sending up canisters. The United States government, NASA, the U.S. Air Force, is sending up canisters into the atmosphere filled with chemicals to modify and experiment with our ionosphere. And when we modify and experiment with our ionosphere up here, we create experiments which they can see through these persistent jet contrails as they stay in the sky for long periods of time, and they can watch the experiments. The type of chemicals they are using are aluminum, barium, strontium, And these canisters are sent up on rockets, and what they do is they superheat the canisters to create experiments in our atmosphere. The experiments can give you colorful auroras, which they talk about as being wonderful. Many times people think that the auroras in Alaska and the ones we see are normal, but there's beginning to be more and more seen across the United States and elsewhere where aluminum, trimethyl aluminum experiments to make clouds are beginning to impact us. The reason I am concerned for agriculture is that none of these experiments have any public oversight nor agricultural oversight. Our drinking water is impacted because the chemicals are now beginning to show up in our drinking water. In California, the State Department of Health drinking water tests were examined between 1970 and this year, and we found unusual spiking in barium, aluminum, strontium, magnesium, calcium, manganese, and all of these spiked at the same time in various drinking water supplies across the state of California and also in Arizona. So what's happening with these atmospheric tests is that aluminum, as one example, gets into, with increased pollution and acid rain, gets into the root systems of our crop trees and our trees, and it looks like the trees are dying of drought. But they're not. What happens is that the root systems can no longer absorb the water and the nutrients needed to survive. Many of our forests in Redding, California and other areas are dying. The oak trees, the redwood trees, the Douglas fir across the United States, many areas. We believe that these trees are impacted because they cannot absorb enough water because aluminum is going into their root systems. Also, molds, mildew, and fungus from warmer temperatures produced by persistent jet contrails are also allowing pests and molds to proliferate, also impacting tree health and crop health. The skies that you see up here, it is important to note, have a white haze to them. When crossing the United States 2 days ago, we saw this man-made produced haze all the way across the United States. There were a few real clouds. We saw the persistent jet contrails from the jet windows, and the skies in the white haze looked a lot like this. So one of the things that we need to really look at is that jet fuel emissions contaminate our air, much as automobile exhaust. They know from scientific studies back in the 1970s that they deplete beneficial ozone in the atmosphere by releasing nitric acid. So one of the things that we need to look at is the impact of just jet fuel and just the emissions from jets as well. I want to go on and talk briefly about a couple of issues here that I think are important for everyone to realize. If we don't look at the problems that we are creating, the atmospheric testing programs, in other words, the jet contrails that are warming our climate, and we say to ourselves, we want to geoengineer something else. We want to add more particulates to help global warming or to stop climate change. What we're going to have is we're going to have a pea soup up there of chemicals which are going to be detrimental to our health. It is much better to take the EPA model of the 1970s, where the Environmental Protection Agency was designed to put in regulations to reduce the pollution at its source, to reduce and put caps on how much pollution corporations, cars, automobiles were putting into the atmosphere. One of the things that we're talking about as mitigation is to go into geoengineering plans which add more chemicals to our atmosphere, which are going to get into our drinking water supplies, which are going to get into our soils, which are going to impact our trees. Our trees across the United States, many of them in many areas, especially Mendocino, Lake, and Sonoma County, are dying. They are not healthy as they used to be. And this problem, having traveled across the United States into some other areas, seeing the pictures coming in from across the United States and other countries, we're finding that there's beginning to be an impact from all of these programs and all the chemicals in our skies. And so one of the things we need to think about and work for is reducing pollution. Alan Buckman from the California State Department in Fish and Game talked about microbes, and they're important to the environment. We have at our disposal already some technologies and already the wherewithal to begin to make the planet more healthy and to put it into a different perspective. But if we go to the geoengineering schemes that are waiting in the wings, thousands of them, to put the particulates up and sulfur, then we are going to be in trouble with agriculture across the United States and around the world. It is time that we look at some different solutions that are already here, and it's time that we look at what's happening in our skies and say we don't need to add any more chemicals, we are doing enough. And what these experiments in our skies are doing with atmospheric heating and testing, we don't know, but the chemicals are showing up in our drinking water. So in closing, I would like to say to all of you and to encourage you to know that just what I showed you today is beginning to impact crop production in the United States. And we're seeing higher UV radiation that is burning the tips of our trees and our plants. We see the molds and mildews growing here, and we see all of this, and we hope that all of you will consider before you think of mitigation and just go forward with some of the plans that are being sold to you as almost a cap and trade situation, where a corporation like Planktos decides to put iron dust into the Galapagos Islands area. This is a proposal, may have already started, and to create algae blooms. And yes, they're saying, yes, we're going to help the environment because we're going to create these algae blooms for more oxygen. But what happens is it's going to impact the marine life in those areas. As a geoengineering plan, it is going to be sold, the credits for this, the supposed benefits, is to be sold as credits to people who want to pollute more. And here's the really awful twist to this, in my opinion, is if we sell pollution credits to polluters to ask them so that they can pollute more, we're only going to add more to our climate change and to our global warming processes. We have to say, no, we don't want money market schemes that are going to go into the ocean and change something possibly to the detriment of our oceans or our air, in order to sell credits to someone who wants to pollute more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a consideration for all of you when you start to talk about caps and trades, when you start to talk about geoengineering plans, because we don't need a money market scheme. We need to have and use the microbes available to us, the science available to us to reduce the pollution that we're putting into the atmosphere, and we need a new direction, and I think that this might be a good one. So I hope that all of you will consider what I have to say today, and I want to thank you once again for listening to what I had to say.
So again, my big concern with all of this is more or less how they are marketing this type of stuff to all of us, right? Because it's very easy to fall into this with the conservative party and think that we're going to get rescued from this crazy nightmare here on Earth. But we're not going to be rescued till the trumpets sound. None of these people, if they're going to start coming forward talking about Satanism, start talking about, you know what, with young children, the acts being committed that these people partake in, you could see that they're using this as the herding mechanism. Saying, look, you're going to end up, if you live in a blue state, you're going to live with these blue-haired freaks that want to grind up on your kid. And people go, oh, I don't have a choice, right? For people that don't have kids, they're going to go, hey, you want to stay in these states if you know what that stuff is dumped on you from the sky? They're going, no, I don't, right? And people are going to go, well, it's the lesser of two evils. Yeah, I get all that. It does sound appealing. What I worry about is getting into these states and then knowing that we're sitting ducks for these people to wipe us out. Because if you don't go along with this communist, globalist, new world order, you will be wiped out. You're not going to have a say in going along with it or not. And they know the rest of the people who go to the blue states are going to be people that are suckers, that they could do whatever they want with them, that they could literally turn them into prisoners, and they'll smile at them, and those people will smile right back, not even realizing what's happening because they're so dumbed down that they could do whatever they want to them and to their own family members and to their own children, right? That's what eventually happens. That's what's going to eventually happen. And the rest of the people, well, they're going to think that they're free. They're going to think that these leaders have stepped up in their benefit and in their favor. And then they're going to be sitting there where they could say, hey, look, all these red states are merged together. Oh, there's going to be two separate countries. There's going to be two separate leaders. And the one leader of that country is suddenly going to decide to go to war with China or Russia. And they're going to be sitting ducks. And people will say it's a nuke. They'll say it's this or that. But you'll be sitting ducks for them. That's what I worry about. Okay, because I don't think any of these people have our best interest in mind. And when I hear government talking about banning chemtrails, I don't go, that's great, because I don't believe it for 1 second. I don't believe or trust a single word coming out of their mouths. And when they bring attention to this, all I think of, all that happens in my mind is a light goes off, a light bulb goes off, and it says, ding, 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 they're trying to herd and manipulate me. Don't fall for this stuff. Keep an eye on these stories. Watch how states start emerging and specifically align themselves with the political party, right? Florida, Texas, Republican. New York, California, Illinois, Democrat. Watch a lot of these other states and where they start to align. And if we see Tennessee, we could start maybe thinking in our head, okay, is the whole eastern, southern coast over to Texas going to be red? And then are they going to go northwest from there and be blue? We need to keep an eye on this stuff because they're going to use this. They're going to use Roe v. Wade. They're going to bring back gay rights stuff. Something that, nobody's really screaming about or for at this point, but they'll bring it back up. They'll be like, oh, these states are now reversing marriage laws for gays. That's what they'll do. And they'll be like, I can't believe. They won't think, wait a minute, why is this happening? Are they manipulating us? They'll just be like angry about it. That's what everyone is. They're just angry about it, not realizing they're being manipulated until it's too late, of course. And that's what I'm trying to prevent. It being too late for anybody out there getting duped by a government that's gone rogue, that's pretending to be your friend. I thank you for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always and your families.